Yeah, good morning and welcome to Sunday Edition with the reunited Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter. What a performance by England's youngsters as they retained a Euro Under-21 crown with a fantastic extra-time victory over the old enemy Germany. Henry saw every ball England kicked in the tournament and he'd be revelling in the triumph and telling us what it all means for England's future. Chelsea are through the last 8 in the Club World Cup, but their extra-time win over Benfica wasn't without controversy. We'll be reflecting on the drama of the night. The Lions are off and running down under with a comfortable win. Former England World Cup winner Ben Kay joins us to digest the lessons from the game. And Wimbledon starts tomorrow, so it's Pims all round, if you can afford one, as tennis takes centre stage. You can get in touch by texting us on 81089. We're on X at talkSPORT, or you can WhatsApp us on 03717 223344. And you can watch us live on your smart TV and on YouTube. Just head to talksport.com/watch for more details. This is the Sunday Edition on talkSPORT. Morning, Henry's here, which is absolutely amazing because he was in the mix zone in Bratislava at midnight last night. Since then, he's ended up all over the place and he made it into the studio. Now, we can do many things here on talkSPORT. We can broadcast you can see us in 4K. Fortunately, you can't smell us because Henry is in exactly the same clothes he was in Bratislava last night. Are you not?
I think Chelsea was still in there at their first game of the tournament with in the same outfit. I mean, I've been in 3 countries today.
How did you do it? Tell us what happened.
Well, just a lot of coffee. Well, the mix zone was such fun with the players, and as you've seen probably from some of their Instagram pictures, they carried on and quite rightly celebrated. And then taxi to Vienna airport from Bratislava because it was impossible to get out of Bratislava. I think partly and rightly because there were so many friends and families there, and that was one of the great things because the press box was right behind where the families were, and just that emotional connection. And we get slightly detached, even though it's England, you want them to do well, but when you see how the families react, and you've got like Harvey Elliott's dad punching the air in front of you and Kwanzaa's parents, it's quite sort of emotional.
So anyway, so it was taxi to Vienna.
Oh yeah, okay. You're just interested
I am.
I'm not putting my expenses into
taxi to Vienna, sitting in the airport departure lounge on the plane in Vienna at 6 o'clock into Gatwick Express?
No, the other one.
Oh, the slow one.
The slow one. But it was fine. I had a good look at Croydon. And a delight to be with you.
Very good. So, just in time to peruse all the back pages and...
Jurgen Klopp's not let us down.
Giving the Club World Cup a bit of a kicking.
Yeah, I mean, Klopp's always box office. I mean, he calls it the worst idea in football, and look, it's a ridiculous idea, player fatigue and all that. I mean, I think there'd be worse ideas. I think the European Super League would have destroyed the Premier League, would have affected the Champions League. I think a 48-team World Cup is a worse idea. But I completely agree with Klopp, and I'm glad that he's come out and said that, and he made the point about Virgil van Dijk. That he says that NBA players get 4 months off a year, and Virgil hasn't had that probably certainly in a decade of playing football at elite level with tournaments in the summer as well. So I completely agree with him on this.
But it's up and running now. I mean, we're off. There's matches being played. People are watching them. Some more than others, granted. Some big crowds, some not so big crowds. Difficult, certainly, for last night. In the first editions of the paper, there was no chance of us getting Chelsea in, which got delayed over an hour, maybe 2 hours, I think it was, before they eventually won. So I'm not aware that it's particularly grabbing the attention at the moment.
No, but it's always going to grab the attention when you get into the knockout stages. Yeah. And as it always boils down to, and you can say this to FIFA, what people are interested in is the big Latin American teams against the big European teams, which is always what it's always been. We've covered the editions for the last sort of few years. My concern is that obviously it's a power grab by FIFA. We understand that. It's all about Saudi money. I get all that, and Infantino's ego. But I worry if they try to do it every 2 years, and they say they won't, but you can just see that some of the American owners will want it and they will expand it, and it will be bigger and bigger. But the damage to the World Cup next summer is Klopp is completely right. If you've got So just take the sort of the English players who are out there. If you've got Cole Palmer who needs a break, Jude Bellingham who needs a shoulder operation, what state are they going to be in this time next year when that really is a FIFA competition that matters, the World Cup?
Absolutely. And as I say, Chelsea finished rather late for the papers, as did England actually in the under-21s, it going to extra time, etc. So it was a bit of a shame we couldn't get that in the first editions, but we certainly got it in the seconds with all the celebrations, which was fantastic. But other stories which have made the editions of the papers, Emi Martinez is a subject of some debate, isn't he?
Well, he has been for a while. I think, if you're Aston Villa, you want to hold on to him because he is... did he win he did win the Yashin Trophy. So, he's an outstanding goalkeeper, charismatic presence. So, absolutely want to hold on to him. Chelsea seem to be linked with loads of goalkeepers. They made a mistake a year ago when they could have gone for Mads Hermansen. They didn't pay Leicester.
You really go over the top about that fella.
I like him.
He's still there, is he?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think he's a good keeper. But look, he's better than Sanchez and the others.
But not as good as Emi Martinez.
Well, they're going for Emi Martinez. He is proven. And Chelsea often take not punts, but they go for younger players. So I thought they might have gone for Mads Hermansen, and I think it was a mistake. They obviously needed a new centre forward. They got Liam Delap in, who will do well there. But yeah, absolutely, they need a new goalkeeper.
Another player who looks to be leaving a club for probably different reasons to why Emi Martinez is Darwin Núñez.
Yeah, it's you can understand why. Yeah, you can understand why Liverpool fans love him because that the chaos and the energy and the fun that he brings. But he's just not clinical enough.
Do they love him enough to want him to stay though?
No,
do they actually?
I don't think so.
What? He's a trier. Is that it?
Yeah, fans love a trier. But absolutely, you've got to take a step back and think. You look at the purchasing that Liverpool have done. It has been so precise, so impressive, so elite level. Kirkes, Wirtz. It was interesting at the game last night. There were German fans wandering around with Wirtz shirts on. He's an absolute class act. So, and they need a clinical number 9.
Woltemade, the player for the Germany under-21s, who apparently might be signing for Bayern Munich, as well as to join Harry Kane. What? Up front?
Well, England played him so well last night.
They did,
Charlie Cresswell, Jarell Quansah, the midfield dropping back to kill the space around him. He was dropping deeper and deeper. So maybe he's a 10 to Kane's 9 or vice versa. I would be surprised because Kane is he is line and length. He is
looking
every
for backup,
game.
Maybe.
Possibly, yeah. And they've got sort of heavy workload, but yeah.
There is other sport which is being talked about on the back page this morning. The Lions, and of course Wimbledon, where I mentioned Pimm's earlier on. Do you know it's up to $12.95, Henry? I'm sure that'll interest you.
Yeah. Well, being a non-drinker, I thought you were going to mention the Austrian Grand Prix because certainly my taxi just it would have cracked a few qualifying times on that to the Vienna airport this morning.
Can you get low alcohol Pimm's, by the way? Do you know?
I think it's called lemonade.
Anyway, are you a Wimbo sort of person? Strikes me as you're in your territory, posh sport.
Yeah, I quite like it. I quite like going. It's a great event. I quite like chatting with him. But I quite like Draper. I think there's something about Draper and how, I know there's inflation or deflation, but he's number 4 in the world.
Yes. And when you left for Slovakia, he was 84. When
Chelsea kicked off, he was 84. No, yeah. but I like there's something about him. There's a charisma about him. I like the way he plays. So yeah, even though I'm not an aficionado, I want to see him win.
But there's a charisma about Emma Raducanu as well, especially if she's going out with Carlos Alcaraz. That'll make it even more interesting.
Is she? I've been away a while.
So they say, allegedly.
Right. Okay.
That's going to bring an extra frisson to events.
Right, because they're a mixed doubles.
At the US Open, not in this one. I don't think.
Well, why not? She's allowed to go out with people as well as play tennis.
The only problem on the tennis front, the problem for Emma is, of course, she suffers a lot of injury, she suffers a lot of illness, and it's going to be very hot, as the Mail mentions, and she's saying she'll be able to survive it and get through it.
I love the way that sport has discovered heat in the last month. Whether it's the under-21s, whether it's the Club World Cup, whether it's Wimbledon. What's it going to be doing to the Strawberries? Your Pimm's is going to be overheating, so take some
Nothing to do with it being the summer, apparently. It's just climate change. And just quickly, the Lions are off and running. Easy victory over Western Force, whoever they are.
I did enjoy the announcer. introducing the individual Lions players as former South African, now Scotsman, blah blah blah. I mean, I love all that needle in it. And you look at the performances of players like Mac Hansen. You know, I mean, I love the Lions, elite level sport like that.
Actually, just quickly, do you like that introduction stuff they've been doing at the Club World Cup?
That's
players
nonsense.
Come on well, you just said you liked it here with the...
No, but I like the fact that they obviously the Aussies have got such a sort of...
You don't want each
they're so chippy player about it. The fact that eligibility has been it may be slightly different. But you
don't want each player individually announced onto the pitch.
No, but that is a player issue in terms of sports science, in terms of players hanging around in the middle. Yeah. And a lot of the players now have got double-barreled names, so it's going to take even longer for them to come out of the tunnel. Look, it's an NFL thing, which is fun for a spectacle like that. But no, I like the sort of lineup and then crack on.
Yeah, get on with the game. This is Sunday Edition on talkSPORT. Next up, as we mentioned, Henry's been in Slovakia watching the England under 21s win the Euros. We look at that in more detail. England are the champions.
No nation has ever won back-to-back under-21 European Championships. And it'll drop to Elliott in the area, and he's rolled it in!
No one could stop this player.
Elliott with a delightful dink up the middle, and James McAtee, the England captain, is clear. Can he poke it into the path of Hutchinson in the area? He does! Hutchinson! 2-0 to England!
2-0, and we have to say, it's been coming.
Nabel dribbles down the left and then checks back onto his left foot away from Stansfield, and the header is in! Germany have got one back. It's Viper.
One goal, momentum changes. England just need to keep focused.
Nabel onto the right foot. Oh, what a wonderful goal! Into the top corner. It is a Germany equaliser. What a final in the under-21 Euros on talkSPORT. Drop to Nabel. He's hit the bar via the deflection. Germany nearly win it. Extra time is looming. Back to Morton, who delivers a great cross. Header in! John Rowe!
Unbelievable start to the extra time.
It is history for England's under-21s. A fourth European Championship title. England's young guns are kings of Europe again. The ticker tape goes off. McAtee hoists the trophy high up into the air.
Yeah, fantastic. England under-21s, champions of Europe again. 3-2 win over Germany after extra time. Goals from Harvey Elliott, who was player of the tournament, I think, was he not? Omari Hutchinson and Jonathan Rowe, who, let's be honest, many of us would never have heard of until this competition began. And, Henry, we'll probably look into the wider implications of what it all means in this second section. But just to reflect on last night's final, you were saying to me before we started that the weird thing is this group of players don't really regard Germany as the old enemy. We're old enough to say, the Germans, this gives it extra spice, but to them it's just another team.
I mean, some of their parents, I don't think, were born in Italy in 90, with Euro 96. I mean, that's like exaggeration. But, you talk to them about it and say, well, can you remember when England first played, when you first watched England play Germany? And they sort of slightly mentioned Frank Lampard and 2010. Mm-hmm. And, England in the light for the seniors have not lost to Germany in 4 games. So this sort of almost obsession, fixation, paranoia to an extent that we have about the Germans is absolutely not shared by that generation.
Is it shared by the Germans, though?
What, in terms of the English?
The Germans think of the English as the old enemy, do you think?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, they call it the Classico or something, which is a bit of a weird one. And I have seen half and half Germany, England.
No.
Yeah, not out there, but I've seen them outside the stadium in Berlin.
Anyway, tell us a bit about the atmosphere last night. And there's quite a lot of fans there. I mean, away from the parents, there are England fans who do make the pilgrimage for the whole tournament.
And do you know what? What a great idea. You go there. The travel was pretty easy. The weather was fantastic. It was in the 30s. Not so great for the players. Bratislava is a decent place, the old town. I mean, it's, if you like a stag party, Shaun, like you, I'm sure you'd have absolutely found many places to go to. Culturally, a few things to see, and you can explore the country. But just the players, not simply the way they played. And we always have this debate about, we want to see England on the front foot, get the players expressing themselves, which Southgate on the whole did. But this, I mean, it's partly Lee Carsley, partly Ashley Cole, partly the fact that they've grown up together playing for England because they've increased the number of age group games. But they really do go out, they trust each other, they play for each other, and you can't really tell any difference between the starters and the finishers, as they say in rugby. The players who came on, like John Rose, you mentioned, how well he came on and fitted in, and they're just a good bunch.
But the final particularly, if we'd flipped it round the other way and say England had lost 3-2 and hit the woodwork twice, we'd be saying how unlucky they were, because Germany, could have
one of them was a very good interception by Charlie Cresswell, who threw his with the Neville shot. Yeah.
But we were maybe a little fortunate, do you think, in that regard?
Well, the flip side of that is England could have been 4-0 up after 20 minutes, half an hour. I mean, England were fantastic in the first half. But it's not simply about the sort of the beauty, in a way, of a lot of their football. A Cruyff turn from McAtee, a back heel from Anderson. The chops of Hutchinson and Elliott. Those bursts of pace and that fantastic dink ball through to McAtee. All that skill. It's the resilience. It's the adversity. It's when they do. When was it the Dutch scored that goal? The way they came back. I mean, Elliott Anderson. I know it's a sore point for Newcastle fans because of PSR, but what a tournament he had. And I was so pleased that Tuchel actually made the journey. In fact, he probably could have seen the first half of Chelsea, come out, watch the under-21s and gone back and caught extra time for Chelsea. No, seriously, because we often look at the under-21s through the prism of the seniors. Tino Livramento has to go to the World Cup, cover either side full back. Elliott Anderson has to be looked at in the September internationals as a potential 6 alongside Declan Rice.
One of the things you touched on there was subs and what an impact they've had, which isn't always the case with the senior team. This under-21 team, every time they made substitutions, they were really good. I mean, a lot of people like Norton Cuffy, who, again, we wouldn't know much about, who plays out there for Genoa. He was always impactful when he came on. And, of course, Jonathan Rowe. And Henry exclusively caught up with match winner Jonathan Rowe for talkSPORT.
I mean, that was about guts, wasn't it?
Yeah, grit, perseverance, determination, you name it. We all dug deep, stuck in. We all achieved what we came here to achieve.
What is it? Is it, have you grown up in the pathway with that? Is it just this collection of players? Because you do seem to be a band of brothers.
You know, it is. Everyone's special in their own way. Everyone's got unique talents. Everyone's got amazing ability, you know. And we all come together as a team, you know, and we come with the right mindset. I think that's the main thing. Our self-belief, our belief in the team, our trust in each other to get the job done and everyone to play their part. And I think it just gelled together, you know. We haven't all played together before, so at the start it was kind of difficult to kind of gel at times, but I think we found our feet very quick, and it paid off in the end.
This is back-to-back trophies, and England aren't really used to winning that many trophies. We're surrounded by Germans who are.
Yeah, man, we're starting a new wave, you know. We have so much talent in England, you know, so it's only right that we utilise it to its fullest potential, and with the right head coach, with the right staff, with the right mindset, with the right people, you know, we can accomplish anything.
Why are Lee and Ashley so good?
You know, it's more the mental side of things, you know, how they make us feel as players, the self-belief that they give us to go out and perform and express ourselves. And listen, to make it as a professional is difficult, and we're all capable of doing a lot of amazing things, right? But to perform consistently and do it time and time again, that's the difficult part, you know. So if we have the right mindset and the right, self-belief in ourselves and the people around us, we'll create a good team and we'll show that we're unstoppable.
And Thomas Tuchel came in the dressing room afterwards, and were you all out to impress him?
Or? Of course, you know, we knew that he was going to be here tonight, and we had to perform, you know, show him that we're here, we're ready, and we look forward to working with him in the future.
Sounds a bit of a character, does Mr. O, does he not?
He's great, and he wore the number 9 shirt, and he took that goal so well, that stooping header, flicked header.
Well, because he stumbled slightly before he made, so he did really well to get his head on it in the end. And one of the features about him, he used to be at Norwich, now at Marseille, one of 2 players in that squad who are at Marseille. There are others playing abroad, aforementioned Norton Cuffy, who's at Genoa, and I think there's
Cresswell's at Toulouse. They're playing abroad and playing first-team football abroad when they might not be, had they stayed in the Premier League. And Gerard Kwanzaa's about to go to Bayer Leverkusen. I think he's got a medical this week. So, yeah, absolutely. I think that's good. I mean, not simply for their development as footballers and the fact they're going to get more minutes, although, you know, Rowe would obviously like to be playing a little bit more for Marseille. But I think also for their development as, you know, as individuals, as characters, as people. You know, they have to become a little bit more self-reliant. Just things like learning how to cook, learning how to deal with another language, just settling in. I think it just accelerates their development. It was very strong as a squad because, as I said before, when the subs came on, they've affected the game. I mean, even people like, well, I say even Jay Stansfield won his place back into the team, ran himself into the ground the way he holds play up. Again, somebody who decided to drop down into League Two. Maybe there was a bit of finance in that, but now back up into the Championship with Birmingham City. They've all, I would say, enhanced their reputations. Definitely throughout. I mean, you look at Harvey Elliott, particularly him, player of the tournament, who's outstanding, particularly in the last 2 games when England most needed him. You know, he only started 2 games in the Premier League for Arne Slot, so he's looking at his position. He's not going to get in ahead of Szoboszlai, who's got that physicality as well as the technique. But he's a player who deserves to be playing regularly at a very good level. So absolutely, whether it's Arne Slot looking at him and having a rethink, maybe he probably has to move on. But you know, from a club's perspective, and we live in the age of PSR, a lot of these players, their value will have increased financially as well as their footballing abilities. Absolutely. More under 21 chat coming up on Sunday Edition.
Now then, England Rugby Union great James Haskell is the subject of tonight's edition of After the Lights Go Out, the talkSPORT series which focuses on the struggles of professional athletes following their retirement. The interview features themes ranging from his high-profile marriage breakup, living with ADHD, struggling with a loss of identity after finishing the game, as well as his work today as a DJ. Here James tells Steve Harmison and Leon McKenzie about his struggles following the end of his rugby career.
You say yes to everything because you're kind of desperate to earn money, and you suddenly find out you leave no time for training and no time for routine and stuff that you'd really thrived on, that had given you that security. And then you've got the emotional thing of going, who am I now? And what am I? And I think you end up getting pulled from pillar to post, trying to do things that maybe you wouldn't ordinarily do, or you're doing like new things you haven't done before, and all of that emotionally can get in the way. So it was a really weird, challenging, hard time that then went straight into COVID. And all my job and stuff was public facing. So all the things that I did were all about kind of performing in front of a crowd. Suddenly I didn't have a crowd. And it was very hard. And I probably got it wrong for quite a bit of time. But the one thing that I think saved me was I had always done therapy. So I knew this was going to be hard. So I went and I went back to doing therapy again, and I dealt with it and I managed it. And I suddenly realised the things that I was feeling were pretty normal.
Fascinating
That's
stuff.
That's really interesting.
Absolutely.
Very powerful.
A reminder, you can listen to the full interview with James Haskell in After the Lights Go Out tonight from 8 p.m. on talkSPORT. We were talking England under-21s before the break. We're sticking with that. We've had quite a few WhatsApps in, Henry. We were talking about the old enemy thing and how it doesn't really relate to today's players. This one hasn't got a name on it, but it says, are Spain becoming the new enemy for this generation? Beating them in the under-21 final last time, the semis this time, then beating our seniors last year.
Yeah, in the quarters this time, and it all kicked off at the end because there was that fairly filthy challenge on Livramento. But actually, overall, it's been quite a sporting occasion. And as a tournament...
But Spain, are they the new one? Are they the new enemy?
Well, didn't they win the under-19s the other day? I mean, they are...
it relates to the seniors as well.
Do you know, we always used to have calls for root and branch reforms after every World Cup that England went at. You were the first one. We need a root and branch reform. Start again. We need to play like the Germans, the Dutch, the Spanish. I think that the Spanish still, with their player development,
no, you have to kick the ball 1,000 times.
I know. You don't like that, do you?
No.
I just think it's credit to the academies, credit to the FA, with their age group structure, the acceleration or the increase in that. And we're seeing a very technical generation coming through. But also with this lot, technical and tough.
Claudius has a simple question. Anderson or Wharton for the World Cup?
Anderson.
You see, you would have said Wharton before this tournament.
No, I've been an Anderson. I mean, Joey Barton.
You probably want them both in.
Joey Barton introduced me to Anderson when he was on loan at Bristol Rovers, and there's some players who you meet and they just have a certain aura to them, even if maybe you haven't watched them that much. And he's got a certain presence. Then Wolves and Boys Club will be the 6th player from...
I saw you mentioning that. Yeah.
But that's great, that, isn't it? I mean,
and Steve Bruce was one who didn't get an England cap, and he was there as well.
I know, and so did Sting.
Did he play for Wolves and Boys Club?
Yeah, absolutely. His parents used to have a dairy up the road. Yeah, absolutely.
Never really had him down as much of a football fan, Sting. Anyway, Gary from Newcastle says, Henry, I can tell you're very happy with the under-21 victory, but as a proud Englishman again, the behaviour at the end of Harvey Elliott sticking his 2 fingers up and Carsley immediately removing the medal after he'd received it puts a damper on the night.
Well, first with Carsley, I think that is a sort of broader thing. I don't think that's
with his staff
thing. I think that's a broader thing. Is that he actually wants all the focus to be on his players. We have this conversation with him the whole time. Said, are you going to take any praise and sort of give us insight into the great work that you're doing? He flips it onto his players the whole time. So I don't think that's do you think it's an Irish thing? I don't
know. I don't know whether he implies it's an Irish thing, just that he took the medal straight off. I actually thought it was because he felt his staff deserved one as well, and therefore he didn't want all the credit. Possibly. Yeah. That's what I thought. What about Harvey Elliott? 2 fingers up at the end.
Yeah, I mean, that was not... I don't know what the sort of provenance of that or what the cause of that was, but actually, if you look at it when all the players lined up... Actually, at the final whistle, there's a lot of consoling of the German. Yeah. Remember, a lot of these players... So, like last night, Jack Hinchelwood walked out. Is it Gruder, the German players at Brighton? You know, there's a lot of links between this. I mean, the
Kicked
Dutch...
him up a height at one point.
I mean, in the Dutch... game. I mean, they'd all seem to have played with each other either under 16 level or against each other, or at Burnley or at different clubs like that. So I think there's a lot of respect. I didn't think it was a particularly sort of vindictive or vicious, apart from when it spilled over very briefly, and then it was just washbags. It wasn't particularly much against the Spanish.
Anyway, we want to return to Lee Carsley as a subject for further discussion, and in his post-match press conference, Carsley discussed the victory.
I think with the DNA, the DNA is a brilliant document, but you have to live it. You know, you have to believe in it. You have to make sure that we're putting the right players in the right camps from under 15s right the way through to the senior team, and it's a great document that we often refer to, and it's shown that we are capable of winning at this level in terms of 17s, 19s, and 21s, and what we can't forget is that we're here to support the senior team. That's our main goal, is to push players through to the seniors and hopefully win a World Cup or European Championships.
So Lee Carsley, is he growing as a manager, and also will he become our next foreign manager after Thomas Tuchel?
I love the fact that he's sort of referring to the fact that we've absolutely the focus is on winning the World Cup. I mean, it was quite a good audition last night for repeating 66 in terms of England go 2-0 up, pegged back to 2-2, go into extra time. Crossbar was quite useful, and England won it in extra time. So has he? I would say that he's far more, not confident, because there's no arrogant streak to him, but he's far more, he clearly believes in himself even more now, because he did get a bit of a kicking from us lot after the was it the Greek game? The Greek game, when he decided to go without a number 9. But yeah, I mean, if you look back on that, you take a step back, and we talked to him about that out there. He had 5 wins out of 6. He got England promoted back into Nations League A, and he gave 7, 8 debuts, and they played some pretty good football apart from in that Greece game. So yeah, I think he's absolutely going to be a contender.
Straight after the next World Cup, because you think Tuchel will leave no matter what. Yeah, no matter what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
So would you be backing Carsley all the way? Or not?
Eddie Howe.
So
I still think Eddie Howe is... I just think there's... Eddie Howe is obviously so tied up with Newcastle, rightly so. Newcastle, fantastic. Now is not the time to leave Newcastle United. They've got an outstanding team, highlighted by Livramento's performance that we've witnessed over the last 2.5 weeks. I don't know whether Howe would want it anyway, whether it'd be difficult to get him out of Newcastle. But Lee Carsley, certainly with, back-to-back trophies. I mean, if we're doing medals on the table, I know it's under 21s, but if you actually look at the England squad, a lot of them are, who have played under him. Probably about half the squad will have played under him by the time we get to the World Cup in terms of playing in the...
Do you think the way he portrays himself, though, quite understated? Oh, don't talk about me as the next England manager, all of that stuff, which he did when he was in the senior... side, to be fair as well, is him being deliberately playing down his chances when really deep down he wants it, or do you think it's genuinely him?
I think that's genuinely him. I mean, you looked at the way he played; he was very much a sort of team player. It wasn't about sort of ego with him. I think there's it is such a big job. And when so Tuchel goes, however far England, let's hope they get to the MetLife Stadium and win it. I think it's a huge ask. But so Tuchel goes, and then you've got, to have a European Championships here, would be quite spectacular for, it's quite a difficult thing to turn down if the FA did turn to. I thought what was really interesting last night was the FA Chief Executive, Mark Billingham's, his statement that he put out, which was effusive in its praise of Carsley.
What did he say?
Have a look. I mean, it's a very strong statement. It's a very strong statement.
It was probably put out 1 o'clock in the morning. Sorry, I hadn't seen that one.
Yeah, no, it was just very effusive in its praise, and just said, what a brilliant job he's done, and it wasn't just a sort of congratulations, you've all done very well. It was he's congratulated the players, this is brilliant, and then went in very, very effusively about Lee Carsley.
Right, so that's Lee Carsley nailed on, possibly, if Eddie Howe turns it down, for them to be next England manager.
I think that there'll be other contenders, but look, Shaun, you and I have been covering sort of England regime changes so long, so many times, and it tends to be the antithesis. So you go from the elite foreigner to the sort of homegrown.
He's not homegrown. You just said he's Irish.
No, but Carsley is a bit in terms of homegrown, in terms of sort of growing up here, in terms of playing here and coaching here.
So what about, we touched on some of the futures for other players who they've all enhanced their reputations in this tournament. So I'm thinking of the likes of, where does Elliott go now? Where does McAtee go now, for instance? Those sort of players. Because McAtee's at that age, 22, where you think,
I was really impressed with McAtee. He got player of the match in the actual final. I think he made probably a brave but completely right decision not to go with Manchester City to the Club World Cup, where he would have been sitting on the bench probably for most of the time. I think he took I quite like the way that a lot of these players are taking their careers into their own hands. Some of them are going abroad into Europe, as we're seeing with Kwanzaa. I think Elliott may be better suited. I can see him playing in Spain. He's got a decision to make. Whether his future's at Liverpool, I don't know, but I think he deserves to be playing. But he's not going to get in ahead of Szoboszlai.
But where could he go? I mean, if you were looking for a team where he would fit, where do you think that would be? Also, how much would he cost, for instance?
Well, I think if a performance like that, Liverpool would want a chunky sum for him. I mean, he's being linked with Brighton. I'm sure there are other clubs that he will be linked with, ambitious clubs who want a player of his stature. Obviously, he's young, and he's got a good long amortization. What do they call it? The sort of PSR value to that. So I think Charlie Cresswell. I mean, you could see a middle to a team around sort of 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th in the Premier League having a look at him and saying, let's bring you back from France, because he's a leader. And we always say, this generation's so quiet, but there's a real leader there.
I'll take a big gulp before I say this, but Elliot Anderson needs a bigger club.
The Forest?
Well, yeah.
Harsh. I mean, so
he
what
moved from a bigger club, in theory, down to Forest, who, let's be honest, faded away at the end. But couldn't he play in an elite top 5 club in this country?
Yes, he could. But I mean, the reason why he had to leave Newcastle, and I think it was heavy heart on both sides. On Eddie Howe's side, obviously on the Newcastle fan side, that the Walls End connection. And I think the fact that his great uncle played for Newcastle, so there was obviously that affiliation there. I think he's outstanding, and I think he plays more as an 8 for Forest, but he's played as a 6 for England. I thought the way he sort of kept dropping back and taking the ball off Beadle and building moves. I mean, he's fearless.
Yeah, a brilliant performance in the tournament. Excuse me, worry, Forest fans. I was only surmising if there's a possibility he could go, but Henry decided he can't. So we look forward to him playing for Forest next season. This is Sunday Edition on talkSPORT with Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter. The Lions played their first warm-up game down under yesterday. We'll chat through that next.
first tour game on Australian soil. It's the British and Irish Lions playing the Western Force in Perth.
Pollock's got it back and he's barreling his way forward. Up and over the 22. Keeps going. 5 metres out. Can he get the offload away? Yes, he can. Thomas Williams will score for the Lions.
A brilliant indication of just how good a talent Henry Pollock is.
How can we not talk about this guy when he does things like that? Daly and Tui Piloto out to Mac Hansen. Returns it back in field. And Gary Ringrose will score for the Lions. Now there's a pile up because there's a lot of bodies in a very small area and there's a bit of push and shove. Hansen is now making his way to the 22 and gives to Alex Mitchell, and the Lions scrum half will round things off. And that is that. Western Force 7, British and Irish Lions 54.
Yeah, great start. The Lions racked up 8 tries in their first warm-up against Western Force. 54-7 victory, which featured Ireland's Dan Sheehan as captain on his debut. Now then, talkSPORT's Alfie Reynolds caught up with man of the match Joe McCarthy after the game to get his thoughts.
Yeah, I think it was a step up. It felt like a step in the right direction for this group. Playing to work on it was tough. I think it's probably a taste of what's to come. Aussies like to play really fast, really good athletes, and keep the ball alive. So it was good for us, but there's plenty to review.
Was that difficult in the first half that the game was played at such a pace?
Oh yeah, big time. It was. We kind of came out the blocks firing, and then they probably let them into the game. A few penalties here and there, and they were back in our 22 for a long period. So it was tough.
Yes, as you say, brilliant start for the Lions. And Henry, when you're warming up, their first test is next weekend, next Saturday. It's nice to get good wins under your belt. We see, I don't want to bring it all down to football all the time, but we often say, it doesn't matter, they're just testing things out, etc. But that's a fairly thumping statement by the Lions.
54-7, absolutely. And you look at the performance of someone like Mac Hansen, and I didn't see the game.
Did you manage to see this as well?
No, I didn't.
Incredible on your travels.
I was too busy refreshing my phone for about 8 hours to check on the Chelsea score. I just think, just all the reports this morning, just reading in the papers, very respected rugby writers who are following the tour and listening to the coverage as well on the radio, Mac Hansen as well. I mean, it seems like players are hitting their stride early, which they're going to need to, because they're going to be walking into the usual ambushes out there, but they seem up for it.
The Mail's saying Lions find their voices to have the last laugh after Aussie's goading. You sort of hinted that there's a bit of Aussie goading going on.
Yeah, here we go, as we say in headlines. In terms of the announcers, as they were, as the players were coming out, and what was it, and South African-born Scotsman, and all that. Actually, talking to the announcer, just Nigel Adderley, who's been sort of covering some of the Club World Cup games, he actually made the point that if they hadn't spent so long announcing the players individually coming out, they would have been able to finish the game before the storm.
Yeah,
because it ate up so much time at the start. So
anyway, football. We should really talk to an expert about this. I'm delighted to say Ben Kay, former England World Cup winner, is with us to run the rule over the Lions. Morning, Ben.
Morning, boys.
Morning, Ben.
What did you make of it then?
Another good performance in terms of, you're putting together a scratch side. Although they've already had a game under their belt, it's a totally different team. A lot of them, it's their first outing on this tour, and there was an improvement from Friday night in Dublin. So I think Andy Farrell will be really happy. It was obviously, he's not going to get carried away. It was the Western Force are the poorest of the provincial sides that they'll play. But on the whole, I think he'll be pretty happy with the improvements, particularly around the line out. There were a couple of areas that didn't go well. The kickoffs were appalling for the Lions, but another job done, I think, and no one will get carried away that that's a performance that will beat the Wallabies, but they've got 3 weeks to improve and get better.
But as you mentioned, there are some concerns, and one of those is Thomas Williams, who Welsh scrum half, who got injured with a hamstring injury, which is obviously a particularly big deal, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, he had a fantastic game, and I think sort of a few months ago, people would be questioning whether saying Jamison Gibson Park was a shoe-in for the Test jersey, but I think Thomas Williams, with his form at the back end of the season, but also how he sort of started this tour, he's right up there in contention. So we'll have to wait and see. It didn't look a terrible injury. He didn't sort of look like a sniper had hit him. It was a little bit more gradual than that. So hopefully it'll just be something related to his back and nothing actually torn, and he'll be okay. But it always happens on the Lions tour. You get sort of key people injured. That's part of rugby. You can't make an omelette without cracking eggs. You're going to injure people. So there are plenty of players that are available to come in if he is out of the tour or if he is a long-term injury. You've got Ben White from the Scottish team who's been involved in the top 14 in France, so he wasn't available to come in, and you've got various other options that the Lions could bring in. So it's just part of touring with the Lions. You're going to get injuries, and sometimes those players that come in actually end up being one of the players of the tour. So I don't think there'll be too many concerns about it at the moment.
I think I mistakenly said that the first test is next Saturday, which of course it isn't. So bearing that in mind, how much do you worry that the build-up is too long sometimes, and you get to the point where everybody's champing at the bit to playing the first test, and it's still another 2 or 3 weeks away?
I think Andy Farrell will be worrying that it's not long enough.
Really?
But, it's one of those sort of strange things that the Lions that actually probably shouldn't happen in professional sport anymore, because you're pulling together a scratch side to go and play, the best teams in the world, and that preparation time, that ability to gel, even though Australia haven't played for a while, they still have in their mindset, all the players will have a sort of team plan and a game plan that they're used to playing, and you're trying to get this team to gel together. So rugby in particular, probably more so than a lot of other sports, everything relies on everyone working in unison. The line-out was a mess last week. That's because those players just aren't used to each other, and everyone has to do their role with no hesitation, or it falls apart. So I don't think it's an issue. I think the timing's about right, but they will have to learn on the hoof very, very quickly, and to put in a performance against the Wallabies that's going to be able to come out as winners in the first test.
Ben, we always ask this with touring teams. How do they deal with the downtime between games?
They're probably only just getting over their jet lag, but there'll be lots of things that they have to do, sort of as part of being a British and Irish Lion, or all those visits to sort of community things, projects, schools, maybe a trip to the ambassador, local. So. And then there's obviously plenty of training and plenty of analysis. So I actually think the downtime, you don't get enough, but what's really important is that stuff is put on for them so that they can get their mind off the rugby and what they're there to do. Because if you're in that bubble for 24 hours, 7 days a week, sometimes it can all get a bit too much. So it won't be anything extravagant, but just getting the boys to go out together for a cup of coffee and enjoy the sights of being in a different country is a big part of touring. The worst thing you can do is lock yourself away in the hotel room in the downtime and not enjoy yourself. So look, there's plenty of experienced heads in that squad, and there's been a lot of people in terms of the management staff that have had a long time to plan this. So it'll all be taken care of.
Do they all get on?
Well, the players?
Yeah.
Well, actually, funnily enough, you don't have to get on with your teammates, and within their international sides, yes, they probably all get on within their international sides, but you don't have to be best mates to perform. There will be a lot of people that are good friends, but when you come into Alliance, you realise that it's people that you're probably a little bit enemies of, sort of, in general terms. But you realise that to be a part of something so special, you want to be sort of known as a good bloke, and sort of. So they'll all be making a special effort to get on, and that sort of common thread of achieving something in your career that's very, very special and something that you've dreamed about means that everyone will be desperate to make this a good tour. So there'll be no problems on fallings out. Even around selection, it's probably a little bit easier on the Lions, because you don't want to be that idiot that sort of throws their toys out the pram. So I've got no issue, no worries that they won't be enjoying each other's companies. And when you come back from a Lions tour, you sort of you absolutely sort of, your relationship with players that you play against in the Six Nations and things changes, and you tend to have a bit of a giggle on the pitch when you might have thought the bloke was a bit of a prat before you actually got to know him in real life.
Well, that brings us to Henry Pollock. What have you made of his performance in the first game, and how he's fitting in on this tour so far?
Well, he is very polarising to the public, Henry Pollock, obviously, because he's uber confident. He doesn't sort of hide his emotions and how he plays. I've always, since he burst onto the scene, I've always compared him to, I don't know if you remember Dodgeball, but White Goodman. He runs around like that, and it's hilarious. But genuinely, he's a good bloke. When you meet him, he's a really good bloke, and I think he'll be absolutely bedding in really nicely with all those players. They'll put a bit of an arm around him, being the youngest player, but his performance was good. There was a couple of errors, but nothing major, nothing that if it wasn't Henry Pollock or someone so young that, that's dreadful. And the good things he did was so he's certainly put himself in contention for a starting spot.
Oh, I think we're losing Ben there, but we definitely got the gist. He loves Henry Pollock. He's a good young lad. Is Henry? I'm going to look forward to watching him.
Why? Because of the he makes things happen.
He makes things happen. I'm just reading the Mail ratings by Chris Foy here, who says astonishing performance, 2 miracle plays created, 2 tries, does things others cannot, but yellow card, antagonism, and errors too. Can it be ignored?
Sounds like a footballer. He says Gaza. It's Gaza revisited. Yeah, I hope we don't overhype him too young. But look,
he's going to crop up in every conversation.
That moment when he got called up and the cameras were on him, I just thought that was wonderful. And you want that bit of a charisma, because ultimately sport is about entertainment.
Anyway, thank you to Ben Kay, who we just lost at the end there, but we'll be talking to Ben a lot more during this Lions tour. This is Sunday Edition on talkSPORT, and next up we look at a frantic game in America as Chelsea overcame Benfica after a big delay. Time to talk Club World Cup here on Sunday Edition with Chelsea through after a 4-1 win over Benfica, which was after extra time. The players had to come up with about 4 minutes left in the game. There was a 2-hour delay nearly because of impending or threatened thunderstorms, obviously prompting questions about whether this will be a problem for the World Cup next year. And the upshot, Chelsea will take on Palmeiras in the quarterfinals of the competition. But after the game, Chelsea boss Enzo Maresca was not pleased with the weather delay.
I think for me personally it's not football. It's already 7, 8, 9 games that they suspended here. I think it's a joke, to be honest. It's not football. It's not for us. You cannot be inside because you don't know what you have to say. It's completely, for me, it's completely something new, but I struggle to understand. I can understand that for security reason, you have to suspend the game, but if you suspend the 7, 8 games, that means that probably is not the right place to do this competition. I think for 85 minutes, we didn't concede nothing. The team was very good. For me, one of the best performance in the last weeks, month. The problem is that then the game suspended, and it's a joke. It's not football, guys. It's not football. You could suspend the game 2 hours. It's not football. It's completely something different.
T-storms in America, fancy that, T-storms as they call them. You know, you get 30 seconds warning that it's about to hit you. You do have to take the players off. It's not unusual in sport in America for this to happen. It happens in golf tournaments, for instance, all the time. And people are like, whoa, suddenly we've got thunderstorms. I never thought we'd have those. Everybody must have known that when the US got the World Cup.
Yeah, well, we remember being out in Miami. And the 2 games there.
2014 this was.
One of the great trips. But a couple of very long matches. I mean, it's going to be interesting for the World Cup. I mean, at least 6 of the stadia for the World Cup are indoors, so that you would expect sort of precludes that. Although, of course, you've got the fans going in and out the grounds if the storm sort of hits earlier. But the problem is that it's a huge World Cup now, so it's bound to affect games, because obviously you're not going to have all the games in those 6 stadia. They're sort of scattered across 3 countries. It is a huge issue. So what do? Have another Qatar, move it then? But I mean, it gets quite cold in America.
But, I mean, nobody's going to weep for broadcasters, but that is a serious issue as well. Everybody has schedules built into this World Cup, particularly like. You have to think about that, whether people want to think about it or not. It's a fact of life, and it hasn't been factored in awarding the US, particularly the US, part of it, the World Cup.
Which you would have thought they would have done, because it is the country of TV, it's the country of media. You would have thought, well, they will absolutely understand the scheduling issues that is brought on by events like this. I mean, weather, who would have thought? In America at that time of year, I mean, some of it's been a little bit naive in terms of the heat, in terms of the kickoff times, which will be, I hope, less of an issue in the World Cup. But look, FIFA, if you chase the money and you take your eye off the ball and you take your eye off the weather map, this is what happens.
You're old enough to remember this, but I can't. USA 94, were there any?
Yeah, well, I covered that. No, I mean, well, I was in Detroit, Chicago, and Washington, and each game was, the heat.
But no thunderstorms, no players going off? No teams going
well,
off?
I mean, not in that.
How's that then?
I only did sort of like 4 or 5 games. So, but I mean, you looked at the Irish down in Florida, and I mean, that was, the heat there. I think they've only just sort of come down temperature-wise. So, yeah, I mean, it was absolutely baking. I can remember the Switzerland played the United States 1-1, 2 free kicks. Roy Hodgson was Swiss coach, and there were repeated announcements from the announcer saying, "Will the Swiss fraternity of fans please put their shirts back on," because they were absolutely melting. And in the press box, I was sitting next to one very distinguished journalist, and he was really struggling to actually work. His computer was struggling. But look, we had that problem in Manaus with England, Brazil. I mean, my computer went up in smoke. But that was more sort of humidity.
Humidity.
Yeah.
But I think one of the arguments is going to be: do you reset the clock every 30 minutes? This argument about 30 minutes notice of a storm coming in or lightning strike coming in, that you have to start all over again before it.
Sorry, you've got to respect the weather experts on this.
They're going to have to change the rules. I mean, somebody sent a WhatsApp anonymous in here saying golfers aren't sprinting about. He calls me some name. It's got nothing to do with whether you're running around or not. Is it going to strike you or strike that stadium, or are people literally in danger of their lives?
Well, they are, and obviously you've got the issue in golf, and we've seen it tragically in golf. But in football, I mean, this is a general thing, and the PFA and FIPRO, the Global Players Union, have been highlighting this for a long time, that FIFA have taken the eye off the ball on player fatigue, player welfare, and this is one element to it. And if they think, well, we can just deal with gaps in games, you're going to get players getting injured.
But then you could never have the World Cup in the US unless you made it winter. But then it might be maybe too icy and too cold in certain parts of the region. But they could never have it if you said we can't do it because you got thunderstorms.
It's like FIFA haven't even acknowledged climate change.
Yeah,
because obviously it has changed from 94. Because I mean, you may well be right, and there may have been games that were delayed in 94, but I mean, certainly not the ones in the cities I covered.
Anyway, on a general point, is the Club World Cup working for you as a spectacle? I mean, not even you could have managed to watch Chelsea last night as well on your way back from Bratislava via Austria into Gatwick, etc. But and we've got obviously Man City still in it. It's coming to critical point this week. Is it working?
No, well, I've been a critic of it for a long time, because I think the players need a break. Jude Bellingham needs his shoulder operation. Cole Palmer needs a break. I understand they are fabulously well paid, and the clubs will point to the fact that a top club will make £97 million from this, and that helps in the age of PSR. I mean, the benefits from Chelsea's perspective in terms of Liam Delap and gets more embedded in the team, but I think it's going to have a huge effect on the start of 1 or 2 domestic seasons. Because you look at Liverpool in particular, their players will be rested. They've embedded their new players, or they will do, in pre-season, whereas the Chelsea and Manchester City players, although City are looking good, will come back in, and that they'll need a break. I mean, you look at the under-21s, they're probably going to get a couple of weeks break, and then they're back into pre-season. Yeah. What is going to happen to the start of Chelsea's season and the start of Manchester City's season? Okay, City have strengthened. Pep seems to have his mojo back. They've obviously got Rodri back, the most important player in the country, with Mo Salah. So, you've got all those dynamics to be taken into account. But I think it will have an effect on
But we always look at it through the prism of European football, and of course the Brazilian teams, they love it. They bring colour, they bring lots of fans,
yeah.
And they're lapping it up, and they're thinking, "What are you moaning about? This is great."
But they're at a slightly different stage of their league season. Also, historically, I mean, you go back to Estudiantes against Manchester United. I mean, that was one. I mean, even Paddy Crerand said that was a sort of an overly feisty game. So look, they've always taken it seriously. They've always travelled in big numbers. We've always been in Europe slightly sort of snooty about it. But of course, you dangle the money in front of clubs and they rush across the pond.
Just going back to the weather situation, Corin, who is a Palace fan in Arbroath, says one of the problems is the integrity of final group matches when one game finishes hours before the other. And of course, that'll be a big issue in the World Cup, 48 teams, every chance that could come into play, isn't it?
That is a really good point. That's a really good point. If you've suddenly got someone on the bench, a sports scientist, who say, "Oh, well, there's a squall which could turn into a hurricane. Can we have a delay, please?" Really good point.
Will you, now that you're back in Blighty, do you think you'll find yourself watching all the games? I know you're a bit of a footballing nerd. Do you think you'll be turning to every game and watching them at 2:00 in the morning and seeing how the Saudi Arabian teams are getting on, etc.?
I don't think you can switch off as a football fan your interest in football. So, I'll be watching City, I'll be watching Chelsea, I'll be watching Real Madrid.
But you've talked about the tiredness, but some clubs certainly don't seem to be affected by it. And as you said, City are looking actually quite good. You've got the likes of Rodri, who hasn't played for a year, so he's obviously full of running. Phil Foden is rediscovering his form, but I suppose sat on the bench quite a bit last season. So there are benefits from that point of view.
There are benefits, particularly if you've done your financial business early and you're betting like Aït-Nouri and players like that in. I think that makes sense. But from City's perspective, are they going to have a sort of dip because not all of their players... I'm sure City will juggle it and make sure their players do have a rest. But they will need it because they will feel it.
I think they look like they're quite enjoying it, City, though. You know, we've had pictures of them out on the beach, Pep playing kippy-uppy with them and them having a lot of fun, which maybe is very important when you think, as Fabio Capello once said, very important, when you think that you can get into a mindset of we're tired, this is the end of the season. Bringing out the fun of it might be the way to go.
Well, I don't want to drag everything back to the under-21s, but they didn't look particularly fatigued. I mean, Elliot Anderson was just running around absolutely giving everything. They all, and Elliot Anderson's had a very, very intense season. So, yeah, I mean, some of it is psychological, but also some of it is, I mean, like Sir Alex did it with Manchester United, and that they almost used it as a sort of mid-season sort of warm-up, when they have one of the Club World Cups.
Yes, is it the end of the season or is it the start of next season? That's the question. Anyway, that's it for the Club World Cup for now. Next up, we'll get the latest news from the transfer window. The reunion of the century starts next week, and we're giving you a chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets in Manchester on July 19. Yes, you heard that right. Oasis Live 25 is sold out, but talkSPORT can get you in. And that's not all. Alongside the tickets, we'll put you up for a night in a hotel and put $5,000 in your back pocket, completely tax-free. Listen up right now for everything you need to know and how to enter.
Alright, kid. You have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay, and $5,000 spending money, all you got to do is text the word Oasis to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a talkSPORT limited promotion run on talkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
Here we are on Sunday edition with myself, Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter. Got a couple of texts coming in. Dear talkSPORT journos, as men of the world, do you think that it is football for world tournaments to be placed in world climates, not just what suits the privileged Europeans? Live with it, Enzo. The days of colonial control of everything on planet Earth have been shown the red card, including unpredictable weather. That's from Rocky in the Fens, who will probably know a little bit about the rain.
Yes, I used to live in the Fens.
Did you squelchy?
No, not particularly. Sort of fairly dry.
I thought Fens were wet.
No, not well. The waterways are.
Yes, well, there you go.
But no, not really. No, I think Enzo Maresco is completely right. You could tell that from the anger in his voice. You know, he's concerned for his players' welfare, which I think he's quite right as a manager to do.
All right, Rocky, that's you put in your place. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about transfers now, things that are pending, or maybe not pending, I don't know. Now, look, a player not many people in this country will know a lot about, but who's getting a lot of attention about where he might go to Chelsea is Jamie Gittins, who's out at the Club World Cup, but we don't really know him.
Well, we don't, but you know what a surprise! Chelsea are actually being linked with a wide player. They seem to be sort of stockpiling him. It didn't work out with Sancho, who'll probably go off to Germany now. I mean, Jamie Gittins is he's a good player. He's an attacking player. I mean, they probably do need someone else wide.
You've got raised eyebrows about this, let's be honest.
I do a little bit because I look at, have you got any more talent coming out of the academy? They've got such a good academy there, and just why not give one of those a chance? They've got to get the balance right in midfield in terms of the attacking midfielders. Obviously Enzo Fernandez is pushing on more, almost like in a sort of 10 position or an 8 raiding into the box. And where does Cole Palmer play? Because he's not a winger. So the argument is that you have to bring the best out of these players, and I think sort of Palmer is best when he's playing off the right, but he's also, I mean, just looking at that Chelsea thing, and you're right, I haven't been sort of scrutinising every sort of second of their Club World Cup, but I look at Reece James and I think he is a fullback. He's not a midfielder. I don't understand Maresco.
Oh, you love your fullbacks who move into midfield, though, Henry.
But Reece James, that doesn't bring the best out of him. That is not a strength. I know we've sort of seen it with the under 21, Sinchel sort of inverting into midfield from the left. Mm-hmm. But Reece James is a fullback, and I think Malagusta has been, he's had one or two sort of issues, judging by the reaction on the Chelsea fans forums. They haven't been particularly impressed with him out there. But I think if you play, there's a reason for this long-winded argument, Shaun. I think if you play Reece James and you say, right, you're an important player, you are a right back. I know maybe they've got concerns about his hamstrings, and that's why they want to play him slightly more in midfield. But I think his best position is a right back, is attacking, and then I think when you've got Reece James overlapping, Cole Palmer naturally will move inside, and I think that brings the best out of him. And I think Enzo Maresca is still sort of juggling that. Obviously, they had the flurry of goals in extra time, and that's fantastic, and they march on. But they've still got to bring the best out of Cole Palmer. But coming back to Jamie Gittins, if you can get another wide player, Arsenal are looking for a wide player as well. People talking about Eberechi Eze or Rodrigo. Rodrigo looks a more natural fit in terms of the way Arteta plays, but Eze, the goals, was it 7 goals in Palace's last 7 games of the season? He's a fantastic player as well. So, look, these transfers and the debate is going to continue and continue.
Now, one that's caught me slightly by surprise this week is John Duran, who's having struggles in Saudi Arabia, and talking about the fact he wants to leave, and he's being linked with Fenerbahce. And when you think how good he was at Villa, and actually seemed a big loss to Villa for him to go, to now be falling out with his Saudi club and looking for yet another team. What do you make of that?
Who knew? None of us could be completely surprised.
I know he could get a bit stroppy at Villa, but he was undoubtedly a talented player.
Yeah, I think if Arsenal had moved so slightly quicker, they might have got sort of Ollie Watkins, and John Duran would have stayed there. Fenerbahce, a huge club. Anyone who's seen any of the matches in Istanbul, it's fantastic.
Sort of place which would suit a stroppy lad like Mr. Duran, do you think?
It's a bit harsh. But I just think he could possibly do better than Fenerbahce.
Possibly, but if, let's say, people think he's a little bit of a combustible character and it might be a bit of a risk, is he at his age, etc., still worth the risk? Or maybe a Premier League club saying, hey, come back.
Depends what the cost is.
Exactly. It's probably a pretty penny. I'm sure he's on a big wage.
Yeah. That would be quite a thing, sort of Saudi Arabian clubs taking money off the English. Yeah, look, he's a good player, and you want to say, some of those goals. I'm not sure whether he won goal of the season, but I think he was absolutely up there. Some of his finishing was just outstanding. But you know what? He chased the money. He went off to Saudi. It was naive of him, but maybe his plan was to go out there for 3-4 years and then come back in his mid-20s. But obviously he's wants to come back now.
You touched on Arsenal just before, and Eberechi Eze's had a bit of a mention about possibly going to Arsenal.
Do you get that? I know this is the secondary element, how does he fit in the team rather than how he fits in. Yeah. Look, they need Sesko.
False 9?
They need
another
Sesko.
one?
No, they need Sesko in.
Yeah, but what's going on there?
Well, they'll get him in, but it's just such a difficult negotiation to do.
Why?
Because they maximise as much money as they can for him, and if it's going to be 70 million, at some point Arsenal can say, right, we need to sort of embed him in, get him in for pre-season, start working with him, getting him up to speed so he gets to know everyone, because he's still young, he's still a prospect, it's not a finished article. It's not like a sort of Gyökeres who's almost like sort of battle hard and understands English football.
That one's becoming a bit of a saga for the former Coventry City striker, isn't it, Gyökeres? Where will he go? Where does he actually want to go, I think, is another point.
Can't we actually decide it now? Sesko goes to Arsenal, Gyökeres goes to Ruben Amorim at Manchester United, having worked very well under Amorim at Sporting, and then we can talk about other things.
Yeah, we haven't actually had a chance to talk about Mbeumo and his impending transfer, which, let's be honest, looks like it's going to be Man United, even though he was a great relationship with Thomas Frank, could go to Tottenham. He seems hell-bent on going to Man United. Where do you play him? How do you play him? And what effect do you think he'll have on that team?
Well, he will play as the right-sided number 10, and which means they've still got to get a replacement for Rasmus Højlund, because he's not elite enough. He hasn't trained on, so they've still got to get a number 9. Okay, if that's Gyökeres, but then you have the issue of, you obviously got Bruno Fernandes. Is best as a 10, one of the two 10s in that 3-4-2-1 system he plays. Bruno Fernandes can play deeper, but I think he can get caught out. You can't play a midfield 2 with one of them being Bruno Fernandes in terms of, is he going to track runners? Absolutely, you can't do that. And then you've got Matheus Cunha, who will presumably take the left-sided of the two 10s. Manchester United's other issues, they've got to start getting players out. They've got to get Rashford out. They've got other players they need to Anthony and others to move on as well.
You talk about Rashford. He seems to be trying desperately to get the Barcelona interest going without, I don't think, really getting himself on the hook.
They've looked at Williams, and they've got Rafinha there. The last time I looked, Rafinha had a fabulous season, on the left side.
What happens if he doesn't pull off the Barcelona move? What then?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, he's gone out. He's in Marbella, isn't he? And he's sort of training, and he looks
in good shape.
He looks in good shape. You know, a la Grealish. It's you know the importance of Instagram as well in terms of you can train and you can highlight how fit you are, and that's absolutely great. I mean, we used to players in the past sort of not taking the summer so seriously in terms of an opportunity to maintain their fitness. I mean, it's interesting with Rashford. I mean, I've said this all along. I think he's going to, at some point, he's going to have to take a cut in those wages.
And every discussion we have around transfers, you've just mentioned him, comes back to Jack Grealish. There's a bit back in the Sun today about how he's in limbo because of his £300,000 a week wages, Neil Moxley, and out of the Sun sometimes. And he is a bit stuck, isn't he? Those wages are big for a player who wasn't really featuring at all for City.
Do you see him having a future at Manchester City?
Not really. Not now. It's been decided.
No, and I think what is focusing his mind, amongst other things, and Marcus Rashford's mind, amongst other things, this is a World Cup year. And I think Rashford needs to play. And I think that Tuchel's already intimated, well, he's already picked him. But, you know, when he was on loan at Villa, I think if Rashford is flying and he's scoring goals for someone, maybe at a club which maybe he doesn't feel it's his level, he needs to be playing. He needs to cut those wages. He needs to be playing if he wants to get in the World Cup squad. Coming back to Grealish, we all love Jack Grealish because he's such a good guy and he is a fantastic player. But again, he needs to be playing, and he's not going to be doing that at City, not with Doku playing like this.
Still looks a struggle for him. This is Sunday Edition on talkSPORT. Next up, our special feature is back, Blast from the Past. Sunday edition with you till midday with myself, Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter. And now it's time for this.
That is very good.
I took up the world.
Blast from the past with Henry Winter and Shaun Custis.
Some people are on the pitch, they think it's all over.
On talkSPORT.
I love football, Stan, I love it!
Yeah, this is the feature where we go back in time and we picked out a beauty for you. This week, Henry's already chuckling about it. It is 15 years ago today when England returned from the World Cup in South Africa, having been knocked out. It spawned the Sun's front page, which said, sunny outlook in many areas, but depression over Heathrow as shower drifts in from South Africa. And that is pretty much how we felt about it, Henry. I know Frank Lampard's goal was disallowed and it was over the line, but it was a pretty ignominious effort out in South Africa, wasn't it?
Well, absolutely. Our friends, the Germans, again, Ozil was outstanding. I seem to remember when Gareth Barry was trying to chase him and Ozil was just too quick and they just ran rings round England. It was a miserable tournament going into it. There were doubts over Capello. There were obviously splits in the camp.
What sort of splits in the camp?
We had the sort of when John Terry came out and spoke, I think he wanted Joe Cole to play and he wanted a sort of slightly different formation, and Steven Gerrard was captain, and there were I think there were splits amongst the journalists, let alone in the camp. Then of course your great mate Rio Ferdinand got injured very early on
before the tournament started,
and England tried to hide it, and then we just saw him limping down a fire exit with 50 photographers there taking pictures of him, and it was just, because Rio is such an important player, obviously on the pitch, but off the pitch as well because of his popularity. That was a blow. And it was miserable. I mean, where they were in Rustenburg, I mean, whoever chose that, I mean, it was a crazy
Truly
place.
It was the middle of nowhere, wasn't it?
It was the middle of nowhere. And I remember talking to Joe Cole out there, and they went off on a safari. And I said, oh, God, that must have been amazing when you went off on safari. And he said, well, we saw more photographers than lions. And it had that sort of feel to it, partly the sort of, the overarching media interest, partly the fact that there were issues in the camp.
But of course, beforehand, we're going into it, we said, Capello, he's a man, he knows what he's doing, and he said, I've set this up, there's going to be discipline, we're going to have this camp away from
no tomato sauce.
Away from the madding crowd, we're going to do it sort of like the Italians do it, and this is the professional way you do it. And people weren't feeling a lot of sympathy when the likes of Rooney were coming out suggesting they were a little bit bored and there was nothing to do. We were all going, well, get on with it, you're at the World Cup, tough.
I slightly disagree, because I can remember you and I and a few others actually having a chat with him about
later on.
No, actually going into it, and we were talking about what the players were going to do out there, and we were saying, well, it's slightly different from sort of Maldini and Costa Curtis sitting around having coffee and playing chess and talking sort of Verdi operas. This is the England players need to be entertained, and we went into the England hotel after they'd vacated it, and you thought, it was fairly soulless.
It was fairly soulless.
And the fact that they had the training on site as well, so they didn't have that psychological thing of leaving the compounds. It was not the great choice.
But one of the ideas about that was because sometimes you get in a bus and you get held up in traffic and you don't get there in time for training in Brazil. I mean, would be a classic example where it would take ages. So there was some method in Capello's madness, but he never won us over as an England manager, did he? This was his first big test. And in fact, there were stories, again, just as in the Sun, arrivederci. So when he loses, we were talking about the fact he was hanging on for a £12 million payoff. And then we were all gathered together when we got the news from Phil Garside, who was on the FA Executive Committee about 4 days later, that he would be staying on. They weren't going to sack him, even though we'd asked whether he would be sacked. I actually asked him whether he should resign, actually, and he said that wasn't the time to discuss it. But there were a lot of people who felt he should, that this was such a disaster that he should go.
You know how much I admire you, but I particularly admire you in those press conferences because they are absolutely crunch. And you're right, because you've got to reflect your readers' concerns, just as I did, and you went flying in and just said you weren't hanging around, were you?
Well, no. Nor was Alan Shearer, who's on the back of the Sun, saying, sorry, Fab, players didn't want to perform for you. Something was wrong inside the England camp. Did you get the feeling that players didn't want to perform for him, actually didn't want to be out there?
Well, first he called Joe Hart, John Hart throughout the tournament. Michael Carrick was not starting, and I don't think he was particularly enjoying training. I think it was very much split into those that Capello was going to start with. We have to remember that Capello actually had a fantastic record in qualifying. I think they won 9 out of the
I know
10.
The only game they lost was a dead rubber anyway,
exactly.
in Ukraine.
Yeah. So he went in with there were obviously sort of one or two concerns, particularly when we looked at the stadium. But then you came up with the bright idea of giving the manager job to Beckham.
Henry refers to an article I did about the fact Beckham was on the touchline kicking every ball and getting very involved because he'd gone along as a bit of a, to be fair, Capello, somebody he thought could bring his experience to the team even though he was injured and maybe implant some winning mentality into the side. And I was quite impressed with him on the trip, I've got to be honest. I accept that he didn't turn out to be a manager in that, but at the time, while he was there, it felt like he was having quite a good input to me, albeit it didn't work out. You clearly didn't think he was having much of an input.
No, I just don't think that. I mean, David Beckham's got many strengths, but I don't think being a manager was necessarily high on his list of.
But he was England captain, and everybody supported that, so.
Yeah, but you can be England captain, not necessarily management material.
But as Henry says in here as well, deluded Capello pleads to build a new England. Now, why was he deluded when he was pleading to build a new England?
Well, because he was deluded because a lot of the things that he was suggesting, and also I think most of us had turned by then. And I think, it wasn't simply him. I think I sort of did one of my sort of waffly post-tournament pieces of 10 things that English football needs to say.
This brings you.
Can you just read the first statement? Because then it goes a bit off-piste.
Henry was on the Telegraph at the time, and the front of the Telegraph says 10 things we must do to save English football. Fabio Capello's in limbo, but Henry Winter says we must act fast. His favourite topic was number 1. Build Burton,
which was a great idea. Thank you.
St George's Park in Burton. Invest in more youth coaches to work with 5 to 11-year-olds.
Absolutely. Dennis Bergkamp, so that's 2-0. Thanks, Shaun.
These are all Henry hobby horses. Introduce a winter break.
Yeah,
really, not that one again.
3.
Well, we're still not quite there, really, are we?
Okay, we'll go 2-1.
We're not quite there. Trust in Flair.
Yeah, 3-1. Look at the under-21s. Thank you.
Yeah, this is now 2025, though. You wrote this in 2010. When did we actually start to trust in Flair, do you think, genuinely?
A couple of years ago.
Yeah, maybe. It took a while. Appoint more football people to the Football Association.
Yeah, quite right, 4-1.
And did we?
No, I'm just saying that's what they should do.
Yeah, but they haven't.
No, exactly. Well, they should do. Well, sorry, you look at when the time comes to replace Tuchel, who on the FA board has got the footballing background?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying it hasn't happened. Cash on delivery. If Sir Jave Richards is really concerned about England, he will encourage Premier League clubs to bring in performance-related pay.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Well, cash on delivery. So I think that you have a strong basic wage and then, enhanced
for every player.
Salaries. Yeah,
that never happened.
No, I'm not saying it should happen.
No, I'm saying they didn't take up that idea.
No, okay, but just because they quite rightly ignored me doesn't mean the ideas weren't good, Shaun.
Yeah, government must invest more in PE at school.
100%.
Have they, though?
Completely. They haven't. No, yeah. And fair play to the Lionesses. They've been campaigning on that.
Yeah.
So 6-1.
6 plus 5 adds up. Explain what 6 plus 5 was.
Do you know what? I still don't understand that now.
No, neither do I. So we'll put that down as a defeat. Sell Wembley to a concert organiser. Another favourite hobby horse of yours.
Which I think they've particularly done. Yeah.
Sell off Wembley.
So that's 7-1.
Well, they haven't sold it off.
No, but that's the point, Shaun.
Yeah. Yes, I get it, but your reforms haven't all worked out.
So my reforms are slightly more sophisticated than your point, Bex.
Get in touch with the real world is number 10.
Well, there you go, Shaun. That was for you.
Don't isolate England players at tournaments. Allow them to experience the country they're in. This was always an old debate, wasn't it? Should the players be in the middle in a city centre? Should you be next to a German umpire band? Or should you be out in the country? And we did veer, didn't we, from should you be away? Well, Baden, you were out of the town, but you were sort of in the town as well. It wasn't that far away. They could come into town and party, sort of, if they wanted. But I don't think we've ever got it quite right about what the base should be.
No, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the under-21s, I think, got it right. I mean, they were sort of going
explain
into
where
town.
They were.
Well,
how
they
their
were sort
base
of.
was.
Well, they're pretty much in the centre of Bratislava. Obviously, there's not so much media obsession around them, but
they could go out at night or during the day, go for a coffee and sort of.
South Africa, coming back to South Africa was frustrating because, the Italian players went to Robben Island and, they had a look at where Nelson Mandela was incarcerated. And, I mean, even if we bumped into the Dutch wags who were going round there, I mean, there was
Did you, Henry? I wasn't on that trip.
Yeah, there was well, that's because you're not enlightened enough. It looks...
I didn't go looking for the Dutch wags. I probably should if I was working for the Sun, but there you go.
Yeah, I had to go and do... Pardon. I had the Telegraph say, will you go shopping with the wags? So it didn't quite work out like that, but I did manage to do a piece of sorts. But no, I mean, John Terry was actually one of the few. I think he went into one of the townships and did a coaching course there. Actually, one of the few, I think, otherwise. Or was
Bex did one as well, but he wasn't in the squad. Khayelitsha, I remember us going into Khayelitsha, which was a township in South Africa where the police stopped us and said, what on earth are you doing driving around here?
Yeah.
A little bit on the dangerous side.
I can remember, I think Dawson and a couple of the players went round an orphanage, and it was absolute madness because they wanted the FA's orphan to be in an England shirt. He was a Manchester United fan. He was wearing a Manchester United shirt. So there had to be a wardrobe change backstage before he could come out for the cameras. And then someone quite high up at the FA messaged me and said, I saw your piece on the FA's orphans. You must come and meet my orphans. And I was going, these are people, they are not political pawns to be moved around for your ego. So, yeah, that was it was an unbelievably fascinating country, but just the England circus.
From an England point of view, absolute disaster. And disastrous from then on right through to, 2018, frankly.
Yeah, they should have given it to Bex, your argument.
Well, Southgate and Bex combination, perhaps, we could have had.
Blimey.
Maybe that would have worked. Anyway, you're listening to Sunday Edition, and to finish, we look ahead to Wimbledon, which starts tomorrow. section of Sunday Edition, where we're going to talk Wimbledon now. And Henry's well qualified to talk about this because you've got a tennis court in his back garden.
But it's a football
as you
pitch.
do as well. Sorry?
It's a football pitch.
Oh, you've converted it into a football pitch. Anyway, ask the experts we're going to do now. And Stuart Fraser, the Times tennis correspondent, joins us. Stuart, good morning.
Good morning, Shaun. Good morning, Henry.
Hi, Stuart. How you doing?
Yeah, good. How's your forehand, Henry?
Terrible.
Backhand smash. Stuart, anyway, it's a big event. As we know, Wimbledon always captures the imagination, even if you don't follow tennis for the rest of the year. But I feel that this year there are players who've really captured the imagination throughout the year. And of course, Alcaraz is the star man, isn't he?
Yeah, it's interesting, obviously, because I sort of follow sport all year round. You know, you keep up to date with whatever's happening at the other tournaments and stuff, but more in this country, I guess most people only watch tennis for 2 weeks a year. But certainly I've noticed more of my friends, which is, I always use a sort of a good barometer of where players' popularity is at. A lot of my friends aren't necessarily into tennis throughout the year, but they're always asking me about Carlos Alcaraz. He's just got that X factor, I think. And, you know, Sinner was so close to winning that French Open final, but again, Alcaraz got the job done, and that means so much. It's him that wins the title, and it's him that's relevant coming into this tournament, and backed it up at Queen's a couple of weeks later.
And of course, one of the intriguing things about Alcaraz, if you're a tabloid journalist, is a possible relationship with Emma Raducanu. When Emma had her press conference yesterday and was asked about her relationship with Carlos.
There's been lots of chatter online about your friendship with Carlos. Is there any truth behind the rumours?
we're just good friends.
Okay, I think we can probably wrap it up there.
Way to wrap up.
Yeah.
Stuart, there's no denying it adds a little bit of interest to Wimbledon, doesn't it?
This all came about as well as a result of the US Open announcing their mixed doubles entry list earlier than expected, because the entry deadline for that is actually the end of July. But I think the US Open got so excited about the sign-ups for their new mixed doubles event this year that they went for it, so it dropped during Queen's. I'm not sure Emma was necessarily ready for that, but ultimately it's probably actually good for her, keeps her very much in the spotlight. Not that she wasn't already, but certainly added something new to it this year. But yeah, very much maintaining yesterday that they're only good friends.
But we will be keeping an eye out for whether she's there watching his match, whether he turns up to watch his match. Look, I know you want to write about the tennis, I do understand that, but it does bring an extra colour to the event, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and this is the thing with Wimbledon. It's all these different things I get asked about this time of year. You know, like on the tour, for example, we've had no line judges for some time now, but because it's happening for the first time at Wimbledon, it's a bigger deal. Of course it is, because it's Wimbledon. That's just the way it works. But yeah, I think any extra colour around player relationships or anything like that always adds something to it.
Stuart, sorry, no line judges. I love them because they're beautifully dressed. But B, does that mean VAR has now taken over the All England club?
Artificial intelligence. Yeah, it's interesting this year. It's it's actually worked very well on the tour, the automated line calling system. It probably had an accelerated process of being introduced more than usual because of the COVID pandemic. They wanted to limit the sort of amount of humans on the court, so it was brought in a bit quicker back then. They fine-tuned it over the years, and it's a very good system, I have to say. There are... Obviously, on the clay, you still get ball marks. So at the French Open, they're not using it. So there's still human line judges there. But Wimbledon have decided they don't want any risk of controversy this year. They're just going to follow the rest of the tour and using that.
I do find that pretty funny, actually, when they were at the French Open, and it does feel like you've gone back to the Stone Age when the umpire gets off her chair and goes over and points at this little mark in the dust, and everybody goes, "No, it wasn't that mark, it was that mark." Or do you trust that system?
Yeah, exactly. It's and it was interesting the French Open this year because suddenly you had to sort of readjust the mind back again to the old school, like seeing the umpire come down and realizing that some of those little controversies with where a line judge wouldn't spot that a ball was instantly out, that would come back in. And I think, to be honest, though, I think Wimbledon have probably made the best move. Although I'm sure many people will miss the sight of the well-dressed line judges this year.
Will.
Yeah, I do. Stuart, I know Shaun's obsessed with all sort of drama around Emma Raducanu, but Jack Draper, first, I understand the sort of family connection, and he's obviously been brought up, and he's an outstanding player. A, from your expert eye, why is he so good? And B, how come he's got to fourth in the world so quickly?
Yeah, so he's had a rapid rise over the past 12 months, which probably was properly kick-started with his semi-final run to the US Open. Results have improved very quickly. He always had that potential, but I would say the body wasn't quite there to back it up, and he's worked a lot on his fitness over the past 12 months. Interestingly, there's two key characters in his box that you'll notice during Wimbledon. Obviously, the cameras love to cut to the coaching box now and again. Matt Little is his fitness trainer, and Shane Annan is his physio. They both worked with Andy Murray for many years, trusted lieutenants of Andy's, and it's interesting that Jack has now brought them in because not only are they very good at their jobs, but they understand the extra pressure that surrounds these 2 weeks of the year.
Is he a genuine contender, do you think, Stuart? Or once you look at Sinner and Alcaraz, I mean, it's very difficult to see past those players, isn't it?
Yeah, I think obviously if you were to predict the final now, you'd probably predict another Sinner Alcaraz final, that's for sure. But, his draws can sometimes work out funny. And at the moment, Jack's got a tough draw, but I've seen so many of these draws over the years, especially in Andy's era, where you looked at his draw at the start, you thought, this is so tough. This is such a tough projected route. Where it's actually the way results fell, it didn't work out like that. So Jack's got the game to go far in grass, that's for sure, but probably needs a break here and there in terms of other results.
Stuart, sort of explain that to me. Why has he got the game to go to advance on grass? I take your point about he's got the strength and conditioning in. He actually, as you say, he's had to sort of strengthen that body. But what is it about his technical game?
Just brings. You stand across the net from him, you look across the other side of the net, he's a force, and that is such a strong asset on grass because not only is he coming in to try and finish points at the net, which is more important, grass, not as important as it used to be. The surface is a bit slower than the 80s, 90s, where it was constant serve and volley, but he's got the power to back that up, the belief he'll get to the net, he'll happily hit powerful forehands and backhands from the baseline. He's got a big serve as well, places it really well. It's not necessarily the fastest on tour, but the accuracy is very important often in grass. So, you combine all these traits together and he's got a very good grass court game.
Okay, going back to Emma, let's talk about on the court, Stuart. And every time I see her in a tournament, she seems to be getting the physio on or talk about the fact it's been a struggle and she hopes she'll be all right for the next match. It seems to be becoming a bit of a perpetual cycle, this.
Yeah, I've been used to it so much since you won the US Open. It's that story, following her career has been really interesting because there was such this joyful moment in New York when she won the 2021 US Open, and ever since then we knew she'd struggle to back that up instantly, but the ups and downs since, a lot of them, particularly the downs, have been down to her and the team around her. I have to admit she's tried to iron that out this year. This year actually, physically, certainly at the start of the year, wasn't so bad. Certainly compared to previous years when there was constant niggles all the time. But the problem is, for me anyway, the coaching setup around her. I spent a day with Arina Sabalenka on Thursday. I did a sort of whole piece around her, how a day in the life of the world number one works. And it was really striking to me how trusted and stable the team around her were. Very professional, and all of them knew their place in the team. They're used to how she works. They're used to what she likes and what she doesn't like. And I was thinking to myself, I was comparing it to Emma's setup, the chopping and changing there must be so awkward all the time. People coming in, getting used to the different environment. And she's spoken about trust issues several times as well. And no wonder when you're constantly chopping and changing. So probably now that's more of a concern for me than the fitness side.
But Stuart, why is there that chopping and changing? You assume that she has intelligent people guiding her career. She's obviously an intelligent young woman. Why wouldn't you just have one coach who you feel is the right person and you stick with them?
That's the $1 million question, really. The problem is that I would say that... Sorry.
That's okay. I need to hop in there.
Sorry, I'm just at someone else's desk. I'll just move to the right. But basically what I would say is that her father traditionally has liked to chop and change on the coaching setup. Now, whilst that works when you're a junior player and you like to tap into different areas of expertise in terms of, someone might be better with the forehand, someone might be better with the backhand, that really isn't common on the professional tour at all. And I would say things probably needed to be more stable as soon as she developed on the tour.
Stuart, just looking at some of the other players perhaps that we should look out for, maybe Brits who might cause a bit of a surprise. Can you guide us on that one?
Well, it's a tough one this year because the draws all round are quite mixed. I'd say it's going to be really interesting this year to watch the sort of how this sort of trio of teenage wildcards do. Mimi Zhu's obviously playing Raducanu and has got nothing to lose there, and Raducanu hasn't had the most ideal of build-ups for several years. I, as someone who works in tennis all the time, have closely followed the progress of 16-year-old Hannah Klugman. As soon as I saw her for the first time at 13, I thought, yes, she's got a game to go far. You never know how the transition to the professional ranks will work, but, she already has so much court intelligence at a very young age. It's going to be really interesting to see how she plays against Leila Fernandez. And then Mika Stojsavljevic. We knew she was on the radar, but last year won the US Open Junior title. I would say almost out of nowhere. So yeah, for her as well, she's got a good serve, power behind her ground strokes as well. So a game that can also perform well on grass. And then if you look at the sort of older cohort, Jacob Fernley on the men's side, for me, is such a hard worker over the past 12 months. Very consistent. This time last year, he was turning up at the Nottingham Challenger, having to play in qualifying, didn't even get a wild card. And 12 months later, he's in the top 60 in the world. So he's someone to watch for sure.
Great. Thank you very much, Stuart. Stuart Fraser,
Thanks, Stuart.
the Times tennis correspondent. Look forward to the next fortnight at Wimbledon. That's it for us. Henry's off to practice his forehand and change out of those clothes, which he's been wearing since last night in Bratislava.
You're off to drink Pimm's at Wimbledon for a fortnight?
Absolutely. $12.95 a shot. Unbelievable. I don't think I'll be having any of those. Anyway, up next, it's the warm-up with Max Rushton and Charlie Baker.